The airport departure board flickered again. Delayed, canceled, delayed. The electronic letters scrambled and reformed like a broken promise, announcing nothing but more waiting. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, snow fell in thick, relentless sheets, blurring the runway lights into shapeless halos. Wind howled against the glass, rattling the metal frames. Inside Terminal C, the lounge had transformed from a temporary way station into something closer to a refugee camp. Bodies sprawled across every available surface. Travelers slumped against walls, heads tilted at uncomfortable angles. Children whimpered from exhaustion. A man argued loudly with a gate agent who had long since stopped listening. Near the charging stations, passengers hunched over their phones like addicts, guarding power outlets as if they were gold deposits. The air smelled of recycled oxygen, stale coffee, and the particular desperation that comes from having no control over your circumstances. Vivian Harrington entered the lounge with the brisk efficiency of someone accustomed to conquering obstacles. Her tailored coat, designer bag, and leather briefcase marked her as someone who didn't typically find herself stuck in public waiting areas. She moved through the chaos with her phone pressed to her ear, her voice controlled but tight. "No, I understand the situation, but I need you to understand mine. The presentation is scheduled for 9 a.m. If I'm not there, we lose the account. Find me another route. Charter if you have to." The voice on the other end apparently delivered unwelcome news. Vivian's jaw tightened. She ended the call with a sharp tap and scanned the lounge for 2 seats together. Behind her, moving like a small shadow, came Irene. The 7-year-old clutched a purple backpack to her chest as if it were a life preserver. Her dark hair fell across her face, and she walked with her eyes fixed on her mother's heels, careful not to lose sight of them in the crowd. When Vivian stopped abruptly, Irene nearly collided with her legs. "Sit here," Vivian instructed, pointing to 2 chairs near the windows. "I'm going to find us something to eat." Irene sat without a word. She placed her backpack on her lap and stared at the snow battering the windows. Her small hands gripped the bag's straps so tightly her knuckles went white. Vivian returned 15 minutes later with a cardboard box containing 2 wilted sandwiches, a container of pale salad, and 2 bottles of water. She set it on the armrest between them. "I know it's not what you wanted, but everything else is closed. Eat something." Irene looked at the food the way someone might look at a foreign object. She didn't reach for it, didn't move at all. "Irene." Vivian's voice carried a warning edge. "I don't have the energy for this right now. Just eat." The girl's fingers tightened on her backpack. Her gaze remained fixed on some distant point beyond the windows. Around them, the lounge's noise swelled. A toddler screamed. Someone dropped a suitcase with a bang. A group of college students laughed too loudly at something on a phone screen. With each sound, Irene seemed to shrink a little more into herself. Her shoulders hunched. Her breathing became shallow. When a man nearby slammed his carry-on bag shut with a violent snap, she flinched so hard she knocked the water bottle off the armrest. Vivian sighed and picked it up. "Sweetheart, I need you to work with me here. Can you at least try?" But Irene had already withdrawn to somewhere Vivian couldn't reach. The child's eyes had gone glassy, unfocused. She was present in body only. Across the lounge, near the entrance, Finn Carter adjusted the radio on his belt and surveyed the crowd with the practiced eye of someone who had seen it all. The blue security uniform hung slightly loose on his lean frame. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. He'd been on shift for 8 hours already, with no end in sight. His phone buzzed. A text from his mother. "Max is asking when you're coming home." I told him probably not tonight. Finn typed back quickly. "Tell him I'm sorry. I'll make it up to him." He pocketed the phone and resumed his patrol. The overnight shift was usually quiet, but the storm had turned it into something else entirely. He'd already dealt with 2 fistfights over seating, 1 medical emergency, and countless complaints about conditions no one could control. His team was stretched thin. 3 officers had called out, unable to make it through the storm. That left Finn and 2 others to cover the entire terminal. As he walked the perimeter of the lounge, his attention snagged on a small figure sitting unnaturally still. Most kids this late, this tired, this stuck, would be bouncing off the walls or crying or sleeping. This one just sat there, rigid as stone, staring at nothing. Finn's sister had looked like that once, after their father's funeral. 7 years old, drowning in a grief she couldn't articulate. That's when they'd learned sign language together. Their mother had wanted Emma to feel less alone. What she hadn't expected was how it would change all of them, creating a different way to communicate when words felt too heavy. Finn watched as the girl's mother leaned down, saying something. The child didn't respond. Didn't even blink. After a moment, the mother straightened, frustration evident in every line of her body. She pulled out her phone again, her fingers moving in sharp, angry jabs at the screen. He moved on, making a mental note to circle back. Vivian Harrington was not accustomed to failure. In the boardroom, she could read people, anticipate objections, shift strategies on the fly. She'd built her company from nothing, survived a divorce that tried to destroy her, raised Irene mostly on her own while climbing from regional manager to CEO. Control was her currency. Strategy was her language. But here, trapped in an airport lounge with a child who wouldn't eat, wouldn't talk, wouldn't even look at her, all her skills meant nothing. Listen, Vivian tried again, softening her tone. I know you're tired. I know this isn't fun. But we're stuck here, so we need to make the best of it. Once we get home, we can order whatever you want. Pizza. Thai. That place with the noodles you like. But right now, this is what we have. Irene's response was to turn her head slightly away, toward the window. The gesture was small, but devastating in its finality. Frustration flared hot in Vivian's chest. She'd canceled 2 meetings to make this trip. She'd promised Irene a special weekend, just the 2 of them. No work, no distractions. And now this. The storm. The delays. And a daughter who'd apparently decided to shut down completely. Fine, Vivian said, her voice clipped. Don't eat. But don't complain later when you're hungry. She turned to her laptop, opening it with more force than necessary. If she couldn't fix this situation, she could at least prepare for the meeting she'd probably miss. Work was something she understood. Work responded to effort. Around them, the lounge continued its slow descent into chaos. People shifted positions, searching for comfort that didn't exist. Someone's alarm went off, shrill and ignored. The overhead lights hummed with a frequency that set nerves on edge. And through it all, Irene sat frozen, lost in a private winter that had nothing to do with the storm outside. Finn Carter reappeared 20 minutes later, making his second circuit. He'd dealt with a spilled coffee, redirected a lost family to the correct terminal, and confiscated a bottle of whiskey from a passenger who'd already had too much. As he approached the window section, he noticed the small girl again, still motionless, still silent. But now he saw something else. Her fingers. They were moving, tiny, unconscious gestures. The sign for cold, the sign for scared, fragments of a language she probably didn't even know she was using. Finn stopped walking. That changed things. He approached slowly, stopping a respectful distance from the mother and daughter. The woman glanced up from her laptop, her expression automatically defensive. Evening, ma'am, Finn said quietly. I'm Officer Carter, just checking in. Everyone doing okay over here? Vivian's eyes narrowed slightly. We're fine, just waiting like everyone else. I understand. Rough night for travel. Finn's gaze shifted to Irene, then back. I noticed your daughter hasn't touched her dinner. The vending machines are still stocked if she'd prefer something else. She's just being difficult, Vivian said, though her voice carried less certainty than her words. "She'll eat when she's hungry enough." Finn nodded slowly. Then, without asking permission, he crouched down to Irene's eye level, several feet away. He waited until she glanced at him, if only for a second. Then he signed. "Are you okay?" It was a simple gesture. Right hand in a fist, thumb up, moving in a small circle over the heart. Irene's eyes widened. For the first time since entering the lounge, something in her expression shifted, changed, came alive. She stared at Finn's hands. Then, hesitantly, she signed back. Scared, Vivian's breath caught. What just happened? Finn straightened but kept his attention on Irene. She's speaking, just not with words. I know. Does she? Since when does she? Vivian looked at her daughter as if seeing a stranger. Irene, can you hear me? Finn held up a calming hand. She can hear you just fine, but sometimes, when kids are overwhelmed, they need a different way to communicate, a quieter way. He pulled out a chair, positioning it so he wasn't crowding either of them. Would it be all right if I tried something? Just a game to pass the time. Might help with the waiting. Vivian looked from Finn to Irene and back again. She saw how her daughter's posture had shifted, how the girl was actually looking at something other than the middle distance. What kind of game? A silent one, Finn said. We make up stories without talking. Just hands and faces. It's pretty simple, but it helps focus on something other than being stuck. He looked at Irene. Want to try? For the first time that evening, Irene nodded. The game started small. Finn signed animal names, and Irene had to guess them. Bird, cat, fish. Each time she got one right, a tiny smile cracked through her frozen expression. Then they switched. Irene chose objects in the lounge, and Finn had to identify them. Chair, cup, phone, suitcase. Vivian watched, her laptop forgotten. She'd never seen her daughter this engaged, this present. Where did you learn this? She asked Finn during a pause. My sister, he said simply. She's deaf. We grew up signing. After several rounds of basic objects, Finn shifted the game. Okay, new rule. Now, we describe what people are doing. Watch someone in the lounge, then tell me their story with your hands. Ready? Irene scanned the crowd with new purpose. Her eyes landed on a businessman slumped in a corner, mouth open, snoring softly. She signed, Man. Sleeping. Loud. Finn grinned. Good. Who else? She pointed at a woman pacing near the windows, phone pressed to her ear. Her hands moved. Talking. Walking. Angry, maybe. Excellent observation. Okay, harder one. Pick someone doing something more complicated. This was the pivot point, though Finn didn't plan it that way. What started as distraction became observation. What began as a game became surveillance. Irene's gaze swept the lounge with the methodical attention only children possess when given a task. Adults had learned to filter, to ignore, to assume. Children still saw everything. Her hands paused mid-sign. Her eyes locked on something across the room. Then she began signing a sequence Finn hadn't taught her. She was creating description, narrative, a story, man, walking circle, looking around, touching bags, moving away, coming back, different bag, hand inside, closing fast. Finn felt his pulse quicken. He kept his face neutral, his body language relaxed. Inside, his training clicked into high gear. Can you show me which man? He signed. Irene pointed with her chin toward the far side of the lounge. A man in a dark jacket stood near a cluster of sleeping passengers. As Finn watched, the man glanced around, took a casual step toward an unattended duffel bag, then seemed to think better of it and moved away. Classic scanning behavior. Testing. Selecting targets. Finn signed to Irene. Dark jacket? She nodded. Alone? Another nod. Near the exit doors? Yes. Vivian leaned forward. What's going on? Nothing yet, Finn said quietly. He pulled his radio from his belt, keeping the movement subtle. Static, then. Yeah, Finn, go ahead. Need you at the main lounge entrance. Credential check position. Copy that. Finn set the radio down and turned back to Irene. To anyone watching, they were still just playing a game. He signed, You did really good. Keep watching, but don't stare. Can you do that? Irene nodded, understanding this was important even if she didn't understand why. Vivian's voice dropped to a whisper. You think someone's stealing? I think your daughter has very good eyes, Finn replied. And I'm going to make sure she's right to be concerned. Across the lounge, the man in the dark jacket made another circuit. This time, he lingered near a young woman who'd fallen asleep with her purse in her lap, phone visible in the outside pocket. He bent as if tying his shoe. When he stood, his hand brushed the bag. The woman didn't stir. Around her, other passengers dozed or stared at screens. No one was paying attention, except Irene and Finn. And now, with growing alarm, Vivian. Finn keyed his radio again. Henry, swing around to the west side of the lounge. Stay mobile, but keep eyes on the guy in the dark green jacket, black baseball cap. Spotted. What am I looking for? Opportunistic, 5-finger discount. Watch his hands. Copy. Finn set the radio aside and looked at Vivian. Ma'am, I need you to stay calm and keep doing exactly what you're doing. Don't look at him. Don't react. Just normal waiting. Is my daughter in danger? No. But the people around her might lose their belongings if we don't handle this right. He glanced at Irene and signed. Thank you. You helped a lot. Now we play a different game. We pretend we don't see anything, okay? Irene signed back. Then, after a pause, he's moving again, and he was. The man had selected his target. An older gentleman 3 rows over, head tilted back, glasses askew, completely unconscious. His laptop bag sat on the floor beside him, partially unzipped. The overhead lights glinted off something metallic inside. Tablet, probably. Maybe a computer. The thief approached from an angle, moving with practiced casualness. He had a large messenger bag slung over his shoulder. As he passed the sleeping man, he stumbled slightly, catching himself on the armrest of the nearby chair. His hand dropped to the laptop bag. Stayed there for 2 seconds. Rose again with something palmed inside his jacket. Smooth, quick, nearly invisible. But Finn saw it. So did Henry, approaching from the opposite side. The man straightened, adjusted his own bag, and started walking toward the exit with the unhurried pace of someone who had nowhere particular to be. George appeared at the doorway, clipboard in hand, looking for all the world like he was checking manifest numbers. "Excuse me, sir," George said as the man approached. "Need to verify your boarding pass before you exit this area." The thief's step faltered. "I'm just going to the restroom." "That's fine, but with the delays, we're tracking passenger movement." "Security protocols." "Just need to see your documentation." "I don't have my boarding pass on me, it's in my bag." "No problem. I can wait while you get it." The man's jaw tightened. His eyes darted left, then right, calculating exits and obstacles. Behind him, Finn was already moving, closing distance with the calm inevitability of someone who'd done this before. "Sir," Finn said, his voice carrying authority without aggression, "I'm going to need you to step aside with me for a moment." "For what?" "I haven't done anything." "Then this will just take a minute. Please step over here." The man made his choice. He lunged toward the door, trying to bull past George. But George was ready, sidestepping and extending an arm to block the exit. The thief crashed into the barrier, stumbled, and Henry was there, coming from the blind side. "Hands where we can see them," Henry commanded. For a moment, the lounge held its breath. Passengers nearby scrambled back, suddenly alert. A woman screamed. A child started crying. The thief swung his messenger bag at Henry, a desperate arc of heavy canvas. Henry ducked under it. Finn stepped in from behind, catching the man's arm mid-swing and twisting it into a compliance hold. The man yelped and dropped to one knee. "Don't make this harder," Finn said quietly into his ear. "You're done." The fight went out of him all at once. His shoulders sagged. Henry secured his other arm while George radioed for local police backup. Finn reached for the messenger bag. "I'm going to look inside this now. If there's anything sharp that's going to cut me, tell me now." No response. Finn opened the bag. Inside, cushioned by a sweatshirt, were 2 smartphones, a tablet, a laptop, a leather wallet, and a digital camera. He glanced at the sleeping passengers nearby. The older man was just waking up, confused by the commotion, still unaware his laptop bag was 3 pounds lighter. "Sir," Finn called to him. "Check your belongings, please." The man fumbled for his bag, looked inside, and his face went pale. "My laptop, my tablet, they were right here." Finn held up the items. "These yours?" "Yes." "How did you... Where did... We'll get them back to you. Just need to document everything first." Finn looked at the other security officers. "Let's clear a space and get statements." As police arrived to take custody of the suspect, Finn made his way back to where Vivian and Irene still sat. The girl watched him approach with wide eyes, hands clasped tightly in her lap. He crouched down again and signed. "You were very brave. You helped stop a bad person from hurting people. Thank you." Irene's hands moved in response. "Scared. But, okay. It's okay to be scared. Brave people are scared too." Vivian stood, her hands shaking slightly. "How did she? I don't understand. Has she always been able to?" Finn rose, gentling his voice. "She can hear you perfectly, ma'am. She can speak if she wants to. But right now, this is how she feels safe talking. That's not permanent. It's just for now. But I didn't know she knew sign language. She probably doesn't, not really. She picked up a few signs from me in the last hour. The rest was just observation and creativity. Kids are good at that when you give them the space to try." Vivian sank back into her chair, looking at her daughter as if seeing her for the first time. "All this time, I thought she was just being stubborn. Difficult, I thought." Her voice cracked. "I didn't know she was trying to tell me something." Finn pulled over a chair and sat. "Irene," he said, addressing the child directly while also signing. "Can you tell your mom what scared you tonight?" The girl's hands moved slowly at first, then faster as confidence built. Finn translated as she signed. "Too loud. Too many people. Afraid of getting lost. Afraid of the sounds. Afraid of being alone." Each phrase hit Vivian like a physical blow. "You weren't alone," she whispered. "I was right there." Irene's next signs came with tears starting to track down her cheeks. "But you weren't looking at me." The truth of it settled over the small space like snow. Heavy, undeniable, cold. Vivian reached out, then hesitated, uncertain how to bridge a gap she hadn't known existed. "What do I do?" she asked Finn. "How do I fix this?" "You can't fix it," Finn said. "This isn't broken, it's just different. She's telling you what she needs. Now you need to listen." "But I don't know how," Vivian gestured helplessly at her own hands. "I don't know what any of that means." "Then, learn," Finn said simply. "Start small. I can show you a few basics right now if you want." Vivian looked at Irene. The girl met her gaze, hope flickering behind the fear. "Please," Vivian said. "Yes, teach me." For the next 20 minutes, Finn taught Vivian Harrington the language she should have learned years ago. Not the language of contracts and negotiations, but the language of connection. He showed her eat and drink and thank you. He showed her, I'm here, and you're safe, and I love you. Each sign came with patient repetition, gentle correction, understanding when she made the same mistake 3 times in a row. Vivian's movements were clumsy, uncertain. Her fingers, so confident on a keyboard or holding a pen to sign million-dollar deals, fumbled these simple shapes. She got the motions wrong, reversed the direction, mixed up similar signs, had to be corrected multiple times. But she kept trying, and Irene watched every attempt with an intensity that spoke of profound hunger. The child leaned forward with each attempt, hope building in her eyes like dawn breaking after an endless night. When Vivian finally signed, I'm sorry, with something close to correct form, Irene launched herself into her mother's arms. The sob that came from the child was deep and wrenching and long overdue. It carried months of confusion, weeks of trying to be heard, days of giving up on being understood. Vivian held her daughter and cried too, there in the middle of a crowded airport lounge, with strangers moving around them like water around stones. She cried for every time she'd chosen her phone over eye contact, for every impatient sigh, for every moment she'd mistaken silence for defiance, instead of recognizing it as a plea for help. Her expensive coat creased, her perfectly styled hair fell loose, her makeup ran in dark streaks, and none of it mattered. Nothing mattered except the small body shaking in her arms and the overwhelming realization of how close she'd come to losing something she'd never even known she had. Finn stood and stepped back, giving them space. He'd seen that moment before, with his own sister and mother, the moment when words stopped being barriers and started being bridges. His radio crackled. Finn, we need you at gate 12. He keyed the transmit button. On my way. Before he could leave, Vivian looked up. Her face was streaked with tears, but her voice was steady. Wait. Please. What's your name? Your full name? Finn Carter. Thank you, Officer Carter. I don't know how to, if you hadn't, she couldn't finish the sentence. You would have figured it out eventually, Finn said. You just needed someone to show you a different door. He started to walk away, then paused. Ma'am? One more thing. This quiet thing Irene's doing, it's not permanent, but it is real. Don't try to force her out of it. Let her come back to words when she's ready. And when she does, remember that silence is a language too. Sometimes the most important one. Vivian nodded, understanding flooding her features. Would you be willing to teach her more? And me? Properly, After all this, I'd pay whatever. Finn held up a hand, stopping her. Let's not talk about payment. Let's talk about commitment. Irene doesn't need a tutor. She needs her mother to understand her. That's not something you can buy. That's something you choose. Every day. Even when it's hard. I choose it, Vivian said immediately. I choose her. Then we'll figure out the details later. Right now, I have to go help someone else. You help her. He pointed at Irene. That's the job tonight. As Finn walked away, Vivian turned back to her daughter. She fumbled through the sign for hungry and pointed at the abandoned boxed dinner. Irene shook her head and signed something back. Vivian didn't understand. But instead of getting frustrated, instead of demanding Irene just talk already, she pulled out her phone, opened the Notes app, typed, "Show me what you want." Irene typed back, "Hot chocolate," and a hug. Vivian stood, gathering their things. "I can do that. Come on." They found a kiosk near the lounge that was still serving hot drinks. Vivian ordered 2 hot chocolates and a basket of cookies. They carried them back to a quieter corner of the lounge, away from the main crowd. As they settled in, Vivian tried signing better. with uncertain fingers. Irene's answering smile was small but genuine. She signed back. Better. They sat together in comfortable silence, sipping chocolate, sharing cookies. Around them, the lounge continued its slow grind through the delayed night. But in their small corner, something had shifted. Opened, warmed. Vivian pulled out her phone again, but this time not to call her office or check email. She searched for sign language tutorials, downloaded 3 apps, bookmarked a dozen websites. Irene leaned against her mother's shoulder and closed her eyes. For the first time since they'd entered the airport, her small body was relaxed, at peace. 2 hours later, the departure board flickered to life with new information. The storm was breaking. Runways were being cleared. Flights would begin boarding soon. All around the lounge, exhausted travelers stirred to life, gathering belongings, checking gate assignments, preparing to finally escape their temporary prison. Vivian shook Irene gently. "Sweetheart, our flight is boarding soon. We need to get ready." Irene's eyes opened slowly. She signed. "Okay." They gathered their things and made their way toward the gate. As they walked, Vivian spotted Finn across the terminal, helping an elderly couple with their bags. She steered Irene in his direction. When Finn looked up and saw them approaching, he smiled. "Your flight's back on?" Finally, Vivian said. Then, more slowly, "I wanted to thank you again, and to ask if the offer still stands, about teaching us more." "It stands," Finn confirmed. He pulled a business card from his wallet and scribbled a personal number on the back. "Give me a call next week. We'll set something up." Vivian took the card like it was made of something precious. "We will, I promise." Irene tugged her mother's sleeve and signed something. Vivian looked helplessly at Finn. "I don't know that one yet." Finn translated. "She says the game was good, and she says thank you." Vivian knelt down to Irene's level. She signed "thank you" back, then added a sign Finn had taught her earlier. "I love you." Irene's response was to throw her arms around her mother's neck. Over the child's shoulder, Vivian mouthed 2 more words to Finn. He nodded, understanding everything that went unsaid. As they walked toward their gate, Finn's phone buzzed. A text from his son. "Is the storm over?" He typed back, "Getting better. I'll be home soon." Then he added, "Love you, kiddo." The response came immediately. "Love you too, Dad. Drive safe." Finn pocketed his phone and resumed his patrol. Behind him, a mother and daughter walked toward their gate hand in hand. The child's other hand moved in small gestures, telling stories to the air. The mother watched those moving fingers with the fierce attention of someone learning a new alphabet. Outside the terminal windows, the snow had slowed to scattered flurries. The dark sky showed hints of lighter gray along the horizon. Dawn was still hours away, but its promise lingered in the changing wind. In a few hours, Finn would clock out and drive home through streets being cleared by plows. He'd arrive as his son was eating breakfast, and they'd spend the morning building a snow fort in the backyard before Finn finally collapsed into sleep. Vivian and Irene would board their flight and arrive home as the sun rose fully above the skyline. They'd cancel the Monday meetings. Instead, they'd spend the day learning a new language together, fumbling through signs and laughter and the occasional frustrated tear. But none of them knew that future yet. In this moment, they were simply 3 people moving through the aftermath of a storm. One child had found her voice in silence. One mother had learned to listen with her eyes instead of her ears, and one man had done his job not just with skill, but with the kind of attention that changes everything. The lounge slowly emptied as flights resumed. Cleaning crews appeared to sweep up the detritus of the stranded night. Gate agents returned to their posts. The airport's normal rhythm reasserted itself. But for those who'd been there, in that particular lounge on that particular night, something would remain. a memory of the moment when a game became a rescue, when quiet hands spoke louder than words, when a boxed dinner and a cup of hot chocolate became communion. The departure boards continued their endless cycle of information. Times, gates, destinations, people flowing from one point to another, strangers bound together briefly by the accident of shared space and then scattered again to their separate lives. Above them all, the snow finally stopped falling. The wind died down, the clouds began their slow dissolution, and somewhere between the silence and the speaking, between the fear and the finding, a door had opened that would never fully close again.